Welcome to the recording of the webinar Driving D2C Scaling Efficiency, How Pureflix Retooled Its Video Platform for Success. My name is Colin Dixon, founder and chief analyst at Endscreen Media, and I had the pleasure of moderating this webinar when it was recorded live on November 21st, 2019. Now, joining me in the discussion was Mark Beckwith, who is Executive Vice President of Business Development for Pureflix, Marty Roberts, CEO and co-founder of Wicket Labs, and Martijn van Horsen, CEO of 24i, and Evan Vernon, Director of Product Management at Comcast Technology Solutions. The discussion focuses on how Pureflix upgraded its video platform. It's a very practical discussion of the problems that Pureflix needed to solve with this upgrade and how it overcame them with the help of Wicket Labs, 24i, and Comcast Technology Solutions. You will hear a detailed discussion of the problems and solutions. For example, some of the things you will learn while listening to this discussion include how to identify those people likely to binge and churn and how to save them, why a unified experience is so important to any video service, and how to retain scale and flexibility in business model as your service grows and prospers. So if you have any questions after listening, you can get them answered by sending mail to info@endscreenmedia.com and put D2C webinar question in the title. We will route the question to the best company to answer it. Okay, let's get on with the recording of the webinar. Mark, I want to bring you into the conversation just as quickly as we possibly can. So tell us a little bit about Pureflix, please.
Well, hey, thank you, Colin, for arranging this, and thank you to the audience for joining us today. My name is Mark Beckwith, and I'm from Pureflix. Pureflix started in 2005 as an entertainment company with a mission, and it's around a faith-driven mission to try to expand the global culture for Christ through media. And when we formed the company, we started it through the theatrical and direct-to-the-DVD marketplace to bring content to the world. And we did that for a number of years with titles like the God's Not Dead series of movies and other. But in 2014, we began an exercise to how do we expand? And we wanted to expand into the living room. So during that analysis time, we took a look at every angle and with the two views. One is, do we build a platform from scratch, assemble a great team of engineers and product managers and operational people, et cetera, and start writing code to launch a service? Or do we buy a platform that might be using some existing tools? And from our analysis of the marketplace and what was out there, et cetera, we chose the latter. So we bought an existing platform that was using the platform. Again, I'm sorry if you might have seen an interview with me that said the same joke, so I apologize. I got to get some fresh material. But the platform was the underlying engine that powered this video service, and then we started to go to town on it. Now, subsequently, Comcast bought the platform, and it's now part of the Comcast Technology Services business unit. So we were bringing the service live on that. But there are lots of other things you needed in there, and one of those was applications. So when we launched the service, we built applications, for iOS, web, Roku, and a few other select platforms. And that's a great way to come to market because it allows you a lot of flexibility and control and et cetera. So we brought that out, and we've been growing ever since. But throughout that time, we found that in order to really scale this beyond the very highly scalable backend through the platform, through MPX, the platform, we needed a lot of scale in a lot of other areas. And that's where we did a lot of analysis again and came to the conclusion that we could use a platform, an application framework from a company like 24i to allow us to scale across not only the experience and the applications, but also across a plethora of platforms. so that we didn't have to have a unique product for every single device type out there. So we did that. And then one of the other key things we wanted to do was augment how we were, augment our data collection, our data tool set. And we did that through, again, after analysis, we struck up a really good relationship with our friends at Wicket Labs.
So, and it's great that we have all three of those with us today. There was one other thing there were a couple of other things that you talked about that I thought were really interesting for goals for the platform, Mark. One was amplifying the value of data. So tell us a little bit about what you were trying to achieve there.
So we collect, like most providers in this platform, we collect a lot of data, and that data is used for a variety of different things. One is around content. So it helps us figure out what people are watching, how much they're watching, all the different parameters of that, so we can figure out what more to do in that space. You know, we have over 10,000 different titles available to watch on the platform, but we don't just idly go out and buy anything or either produce or license just any kind of title. We do that based on the mission of the company to bring clean family content, clean faith-driven family content to the marketplace, either in a production stance or, producing original or license. But we do that based on what our audience is consuming and such. So we needed lots of different ways to figure out their tastes and their consumption matters. And then the other thing that allowed us to do is based on knowing who our customers were, it allows us a very effective mechanism to go out and create lookalike campaigns for Facebook, Instagram, or other digital mechanisms so that we can track new subscribers. So we do it for a lot of different reasons, but those are two of the primary reasons, to help our consumers get the right kind of content and for us to attract the consumers that might be interested in our service.
And the final question is scaling up, right? You're in the happy position of actually growing quite quickly. And that was a key concern as well, right?
Correct. So we knew that from with Comcast and the platform and the video engine, the back end engines that we were doing, we had a very highly scalable environment. So we could grow from startup to multiple millions. There are millions upon millions upon millions, and that's our goal. But by adding 24i and some of these other partners like Wicket, we know we can scale all those other avenues to grow with our service to reach the masses. Our mission is to bring Christ-driven content to as wide an audience as we can, and we needed a platform and tools in order to help us do that.
Very good. So I think it might be a good point for us now to have your key platform providers introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into a more detailed discussion of how you actually went about implementing the platform and how things are going. So why don't we start with you, Marty, and Emma, if you could bring up slide 3, please.
Sure. So Wicket Labs is essentially the big data department for media companies. We help aggregate data from a whole bunch of different sources, the video management system, in this case MPX, from the subscriber management system and all the revenue events that need to come in, so we really understand who's coming in and who's in trial and who's converting, who's leaving, etc. We also pull in a bunch of data from the site and app analytics as well, so we really understand that relationship between who's consuming what video, when, and what's the relationship with that content. And then, we tie that all together because oftentimes, your site analytics will tell you what video they watch, but it won't tell you whether that's a show or a movie. And so we can pull that right out of the video platform. So once we have all that data together and harmonized, we then present that data back in a way that really tells a story. So it's pretty evident about the best actions to take for your business. And then with that, we take that data and plug it right back into the marketing systems that our customers use to run, as Mark mentioned, those Facebook and Google lookalike campaigns to help improve trial conversions, to engage the current customers and make sure that they're satisfied with the service, and ultimately then to save them if they're at risk as well. So, really taking that data and thinking about it every key stage of the customer's life cycle. How are we communicating with them? What's the right message to tell? And specifically, breaking those into specific cohorts so we have a really relevant message for them.
Very good, and we'll be getting into all of those issues, I'm sure, in just a few minutes. Martine, please introduce yourself and tell us what 24i did, how 24i fits into this solution that Pureflix is using.
Yes, so thank you for having me. I think Mark already explained it really well. I think what we see nowadays is you need to be on a lot of platforms because you need to be where your customers are. And there's a journey along the day, and that's where you will use a lot of screens, and make sure that you are able to have an app on all those screens that work is for a company like Pureflix really important, but also really hard to do, because if you compare it to, for instance, a Netflix, they have a really big technology team with a lot of people working on all the things that we do with the companies that we're now here providing Pureflix similar service, and that is really tough. And I think if you now see what Disney Plus is launched and how much challenges they face, that is difficult. And I think together we solve that. And on the platform side, there are a lot of technical difficulties that we are solving for Pureflix to make sure that their service can be watched on all those platforms in a fragmented market.
Very good, very good. Okay, so we'll be getting into those in just a moment as well. Emma, can you bring up slide 6, please? Evan, please introduce yourself and Comcast Technical Services.
Sure, thank you. My name is Evan Vernon. I do product management for Comcast Technology Solutions, formerly the platform. Comcast Technology Solutions is effectively a video platform engine, as previously mentioned. So we are a very highly scaled, internationally distributed video management system. And within our systems, we represent the ability for companies like Pureflix to ingest, process, and encode and transcode their content, to manage all of their metadata, to handle all of their rights management, distribution capabilities, geo restrictions, really anything that has to do with taking content, putting it into a format that any device can use, and being able to distribute it to any customer anywhere in the world at very high scale. So one of our key propositions and key values is that we have the ability to handle literally billions of video requests per month. And for companies, we work with companies like Pureflix to make sure that they can handle their commerce, their monetization capabilities, their video distribution, all of their encoding. We really are the engine that helps connect to the beautiful applications that Martine's company makes, and as well as we also generate a fair amount of the data that is then populated into Wicket with Marty System to help drive the insights modules as well. So we operate really as the distribution and video management systems in the back end, and that is something that we feel really honored to have the opportunity to help Pureflix get their content out to the world.
Super, great. Okay, once again, we'll be getting to lots more in just a few moments. So, Mark, why don't we start with the unified experience? Tell us why that unified experience was so important to you.
Well, what we've learned in today's streaming world is the more devices you can be on that are seamless across all the devices, the more engaged your customers will be. We've seen that our lifetime value is higher when we're on multiple devices because it allows for transparency or transportability across the different kinds of things that might be within the home, whether that's their primary device, like a Roku or a web browsers. But then it allows them to seamlessly go to a mobile environment or a tablet environment and pick up right where they left off, whether that was in the middle of a video or within a binge watching session, or at the top layer of their navigation experience, so that we can present lots of different categories or content types or things of interest for them to find, discover, and consume, so that they can enjoy their experience with Pureflix. So having this unified environment, this more consistent environment, this highly scalable environment helps us do that, and it shows through the amount of consumption. So credits to both Comcast and 24i. We've driven more than 71 million hours of viewing since we started our enterprise in 2015, since we launched in 2015, and that's a vast significant portion of that has happened in the last 18 months as we scaled this service. We do nearly upwards of 2 million or more hours a month of video viewing. So, that's both, it's a credit to our platform providers, our platform participants to do that.
Very good. So Martin, talk to us about how you help Mark achieve that.
Shall I go through my slides? Do you want that now?
Yes, please. Talk to us about how you helped Mark achieve that. And it sounds like knowing the viewer is a very, very important piece of the puzzle, right? So if we can go to the next slide, Emma.
So actually, what's important, and I think Mark addressed it already a little bit, is if you see the left side of this slide, it shows a little bit like, and this will resonate, I think, with the journey along the day with the screens that you're using. When you wake up, the first thing you do is you pick up your mobile and you start to look into the last news and maybe watch a small video. You go for breakfast, you go to your work, have lunch, go to do some work again, and finally at the end of the day you come home. You start watching content, and right before you go to bed, you pick up your cell phone before you put it into the charger. And with that journey, you face a lot of different screens, and those screens are not only different during the day, also the way that you are using them is different. And I will tell you a little bit about that later. But also the way that the different devices that everybody has. So it's a huge fragmented market, which makes it hard to create an application that works seamlessly on all these devices. And as you see, people can engage with Pureflix along the day during different screens, and that's really important because you never know when someone will use a screen, when he's commuting or when he's at home. You want to make sure that he has the right experience, but you also don't know which brand he has. Maybe he has a smart TV of Samsung, or he's using a Roku to consume content in the evening. Those are really important things to address and to make sure that you are on a wide variety of those screens. But even in for instance, in smart TVs, there are a lot of different brands. With Roku, you have different versions of the Roku devices that for the consumer maybe seem the same, but in any case they're different. And what you don't want to in this case bother Mark with specific firmware on a Samsung that doesn't work, and that needs to be addressed. And if you look in this whole ecosystem, that also means that you use on the big screen much more long form content, but also the way that you address devices. If it's a device that is only primarily used by the viewer itself, so which is much more with mobile, where you have the big screen that is used by the whole family. So that has influence, for instance, on recommendation. And what you see is that the way that you are showing the content is extremely important. And for that, there are a few things needed. First of all, the Comcast system allows you to create playlists, which are actually the rows that you can show in your application, where you of course want to have a recommended row, an editorial row, maybe a continue watching row, and you want to make sure that you are addressing the right content at the right moment. And if you are changing the application on a regular basis because you get more content every time Pureflix is adding new content, you want to emphasize new content, you want to make sure that you can edit that and make sure that you are showing the right content for the right screen. And by changing that, you can influence the usage, which then you can see again in Wicked Labs. And I think one of the good examples that Marty always gives is they have beautiful insights in how people are using the applications. And one of the insights that we got was if you're using multiple screens in an account, that means that the user is less likely to churn. And that is something that we can get with the data that we can get from the applications. And with that data, you can enhance the application again, and 24i delivers a tool which we call Backstage that makes it possible to adapt that interface continuously and to make sure that you can reorder rows, give them a new UI, so that you are able to freshen up the application, especially with the editorial content, and show it in the right way by importing the right content from the Comcast system. And that makes that the application is always fresh, which helps the user to drive to the right content.
That's such a challenge, right? With so many applications out there, so many different application platforms, keeping all of those in sync with the same functionality, it's really a challenge, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So that's also what we see nowadays is and it's not only getting the technology right, but also make sure that you're utilizing the search of the different platforms that are native, or that the search works correctly in the application. We rely on the Comcast system for those features of search, but the features, everybody expects the same features on every platform, and that is sometimes really difficult, because if you create something, you need to create it in a way that it feels also native for that user. So an Android user is used to another UI than an iOS user. But if you're only using one system, it pretty looks similar, but it's actually really different. So to give you a simple example is, if you have we call it the hamburger menu, so a button that opens up the menu, there are total different ways of how the menu is used with Android or iOS. With the one, it goes over the content, and with the other, it pushes the content away. So in order to get that feeling right in all those applications and make sure that the application looks the same on every platform and works in the same way, but that the actual technology makes it possible to adapt to that platform, that is something that you don't want to bother Pureflix with. That's our expertise. And
right.
Make sure that the video streams work. That is something that CTS is doing. But for every platform, we need different streams, and that needs to work seamlessly. The user doesn't care if you have an HLS stream or if you have a dash stream or all the technologies things. They don't care. They just want to watch the content in a really good and qualitative way. So yeah, that's a challenge. But we have developed over 500 different applications. So with that knowledge, we can make sure that goes pretty seamless. And I sometimes compare it with the duck that seems pretty slow on the water and not being really active, but in the meanwhile, under the surface, he's paddling pretty rapidly with his legs in order to make sure that he stays still. And that is actually what we do with Wicked and CTS, is to make sure that the experience looks pretty seamless, but in the end, we're all paddling pretty hard to make it work.
Right. It's with so many different platforms, it's such a challenge. But now might be a really good time for us to jump in and let's go back to something that Mark mentioned at the beginning with the data. Emma, could you bring slide 13 up, please? Mark, can you talk to us a little bit more about what you were trying to achieve with the data? Sorry, slide 12, Emma. It's really, I think, a very difficult issue for us with pulling all of that data from all of the different sources together, right? Was that a key goal?
Yeah, and so we have our own. We have a big data lake, like like everybody in the space. They collect and aggregate data into a place. But then the challenge is once you have all this data, what do you do with it? How do you parse it? How do you operationalize it? I don't know the perfect phrase for it right now, guys. So apologies. But so we slice and dice it via our own tools and come up with a lot of things that help us determine how we're going to do marketing, how we're going to what our audience is doing and their relative happiness, etc. But one of the key things, or one of the important things, was the addition of Wicket, because they brought a data analytics perspective to us that we hadn't had, and that is around that happiness side. So they can tell us, via their complex algorithms, and I'll let Marty dig into that. But who our happiest customers are and why, and who our unhappiest customers are and why. And so that allows us to do a couple of really cool things. One of them is, if we've got unhappy customers and we have reasons, we can address that. Is it a platform issue? Is it a content issue? There's relative things that we can learn and improve upon. But it also allows us to, if they're unhappy, they're in danger of leaving us. So we can come up with different mechanisms to try to retarget them and make them happier, address things before they either walk or after, if they have churned out, try to reacquire. So data is while all the other things are the big engine, the data is almost as important as everything else.
So maybe this is a great time for us to talk to Marty. How did you help Mark achieve this, Marty? He's got lots of data in different data pools he needs to pull together. He wants to keep his customers happy. So why don't you tell us how you helped him do that? And Emma, if you could bring up slide 3, that would be great.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, if we jump into slide 4, just one more, I think it's a good visual for kind of what we're talking about here. So, as Mark talked about, one of the uses of the data is to apply machine learning to it. And in this particular case, our first machine learning application, we call it the Customer Happiness Index. It basically has about 65 different features or questions that we ask of the data for each one of our customers. And so it gets trained on each customer to really figure out what makes a customer at risk of leaving the service, but also what makes them really happy, that they actually look like they're going to stick with the service for the next month and the next month, et cetera. So everybody gets a Chi score. Once we understand where that Chi score is, as Mark mentioned, there's a couple of different applications for it. For our happiest customers, Mark at the very beginning talked about how effective lookalike campaigns are in Facebook and Google and other services that offer that. It's typically they're a little more pricey on a relative customer acquisition cost basis, but they're typically the best acquisition tools that we're seeing in the marketplace today. But to power that, you need a good reference set. And what our customers have been doing is using this Customer Happiness Index, their happiest customers, to identify who's, a great customer. And so Facebook will only advertise to people that look like your happiest customers. And so we're seeing some tremendous results overall with these particular programs, people doubling their customer acquisition per day based on running these particular campaigns and things like that. So some great results there. But the other side of the equation, as Mark talked about, is also really important as well. Identifying those users that are at risk and why they're at risk with reason codes allows you to break them into cohorts and address them, as a cohort. So, one of the really not intuitive things that the machine learning models kind of spit out of the whole system was that there was a cohort of users. We see a cohort of users, and this happens in a lot of the different customers we work with, where their average active usage or consumption is well above average. And when you actually dig into this cohort, they kind of fall into this persona of a binge and churn. They come in and they're just kind of cranking through your content library, and then they're quick to leave. So, the activity there around how do we save those particular users is to get more aggressive in our outreach to that particular cohort. So we start to, recommend, instead of just doing maybe a monthly mailing, you start to take that cohort and hit them maybe every week or every 2 weeks, much more frequently, and start advertising the breadth of content you have. In Pureflix's case, as Mark mentioned, there's over 10,000 titles, and there's all kinds of hidden gems in their content library that people love about that content, but maybe they just haven't found it yet. And so the best save action for the binge and churners is to then jump in and start to advertise that breadth of content that's out there. For others, it might be other reasons that they're at risk. There might be credit card issues. There could be inactivity with the service, things like that. So breaking each of those cohorts down can then save more of your current customers, which extends that tenure with them and ultimately results in a better lifetime value for them.
And so you also have this other thing that you call the attention index. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the attention index is, it's kind of like a net promoter score for video, or it's a shortcut for entertainment value. So we take everybody who watches a video more than 75% of the video, and we take everybody who's watched less than 10% of the video, and we subtract those, less than 10% from the top cohort there, and you quickly find this attention index. Is this content compelling? Is it keeping people engaged with the content? And there's two things we find across all of our customers. The first is that every one of our customers has a top 10 title based on video views or audience size that has a pretty low attention index. There's something about that show or that movie or that event that is just not holding people's attention. And so that's kind of wasted real estate, and promoting something else in that particular slot or in that carousel might make better use of that space. But conversely, we find that every one of our customers has hidden gems. These hidden gems are a really high attention index, 88, 90, 93, like everybody's sticking with this particular show. And yet, maybe they only have a couple hundred people or a couple thousand people that have seen that particular show or that particular movie. And in that particular case, starting to promote those hidden gems can actually drive overall engagement with the service up. And we actually see that happening with many of our customers as they start to promote these hidden gems. There's also typically a benefit with hidden gems because, maybe they're back catalog stuff, maybe the content licensing is a little bit cheaper, things like that. And so you really sort of get the leverage through the full content library by using something like the attention index in terms of understanding, is this content compelling and entertaining?
Yeah, it sounds like very valuable information to an SVOD service. What advice would you give to people who are who want to really leverage their data better? What sort of advice would you give them to do that? Yeah.
So, as Mark talked about earlier, it all starts with, are we collecting the right data up front? And so and how do we get access to that data? Does our subscriber management and revenue system allow us to really understand who's coming into and who's leaving the service and why they might be leaving the service? The, voluntary versus involuntary churn. Involuntary is like payment, credit card issues, things like that. Does our site and app analytics actually, is it individualized? So we can actually, I don't care, it's, Bob, it's so-and-so, but but is it user 1, 2, 3? Can I understand what they're consuming? Because again, that allows us to curate and personalize an experience for those users over time, as well as to tailor our outreach to those users in a much more refined way about what shows they like and other shows they may like. And then do we have a robust video management system that's sitting behind that really allows to then correlate, again, that video into the, is it a show or is it a movie, et cetera. So pulling all that data together and harmonizing that data, every data project that you look at, doesn't really matter if it's in the video space or anywhere, it's really, they say that 70% of the effort is actually really kind of the data harmonization. And it's really unsung heroes work to get all that data together and into a really good format. But once you have that, then you have a really good foundation for applying visualization, and most importantly, being able to plug that data right back into your actions, like your marketing outreach or your recommendations, et cetera, that really drive really good results. We think about kind of like a data hierarchy of needs, where there's the harmonization, then there's the visualization, then there's the actual actions and decisions that get made on that data, and ultimately there is, at its peak, you can prove it. You can prove that the data that you plugged into that marketing campaign produced a better result, a lower customer acquisition cost, or more customers acquired. And you really have to think about that whole hierarchy of needs around data to have a really successful data service.
Very good. So data, very definitely, I think it's the engine, the fuel that video services are running on these days. So I think I heard you say invest in that data architecture up front, make sure it's scalable and extensible, and keep it clean. Keep that data clean.
That's right.
So that you can leverage it. So it's probably time for us to let's talk about the scalability of the overall platform. And so I want to turn back to you quickly, Mark. One of the things that's been quite challenging for you is scalability, right? You've been growing pretty quickly. So talk about what some of the scalability challenges were, and how you're doing achieving the scalability you need.
Sure. So on that side, first was having since video is the core of everything we did, we had to have a video platform engine or video platform that, had all the capabilities that you would want, as well as the ability to grow without necessarily, from a business model perspective, we weren't paying the cost, and we were thankful to our partner Comcast that they didn't have this mentality. That you weren't paying effectively for a Ferrari when the size of your service was maybe more at a reasonable a sedan. But having said that, as you keep growing and growing and growing, you're getting up to the capabilities, and I don't know if my analogy is the right thing, but it allows us to grow to, be able to perform or have all the capabilities of a Ferrari, and yet not having to have paid for that kind of capability all along. So it was a very effective business model, is what I'm trying to get at. So one was the platform capabilities, the architecture, the intelligence, the support, the professional services, everything behind the scenes. But there's also another key factor to what allows us to do a lot of the things we're doing in and around the video engine, is how pliable and supportable it is from all these other things that we're connecting to it. And you can think about the easy ones like the application framework from 24i. And so that's easier to think about. And then, maybe slightly a step above that is how it connects to the data. But Comcast does a wonderful job at looking for partners across all aspects of the ecosystem, and I'm going to let Evan dive into this. But what they do for a small player or a smaller company like us is they're trying to drive efficiencies so that, pre-integrations or doing a lot of the work up front for things that really add value, so that we can effectively get into it at a very fair both price and work effort. Because if we had to undertake because of our size and scale and revenue. If we had to undertake the detailed integration, planning, scoping, et cetera, of every little thing we wanted to connect into this system, it would be very difficult. But via the architecture, partner planning, everything they do, and again, let Evan dive into this, we can ride that benefit for our benefit. So we are thankful for that, and I'm going to pass the mic now.
Very good. So Evan, it sounds like an excellent opportunity for you to step in here. Emma, could you bring up slide 6, please? So talk to us a little bit about what should a business like Pureflix consider to enable the creation of an end-to-end online video offering?
Sure, absolutely. So when we work with companies like Pureflix, I think one of the things that, to Mark's point, is very important is that we are the ultimate enablers of their success. As the video engine and as kind of the center of the wheel, the hub to the spokes, it's really important that we have two things that we are very capable of doing. One is that we can configure our systems to do exactly what Pureflix wants and needs. Whether that be handling how they do their data management and their rights management and their distribution management, and also things more fundamental to the user experience, like the ability to set and define their video distribution, like their actual transcoding and their video stream quality, and the ability to remove the complexity around delivering a very high quality stream to any device on any network in any situation. And that is a challenge that is sort of larger than it seems, especially when you have to operate at very high scale. So, for us, it's very important to ensure that our systems are very flexible to do. We don't want to ask Pureflix we don't want to give them a box and tell them to fit inside of it. We really want to work with companies like Pureflix and say, what kind of box do you want? How do you want your service to be consumed by users? And knowing that we are really more of the back-end systems, but ultimately one of the major drivers of the actual content experience. So our systems have to be able to very quickly and easily connect to the application frameworks that Martine's team builds. We have to be able to generate this data in a very understandable and cohesive format, so that way we don't, when we give it off to Wicked Labs, it's not something that creates extra work on them. And then, the other part of this that is very important to us as this, this kind of central entity is that we can help enable very quickly companies like Pureflix to expand their ecosystem to a variety of other tools. So that means that we need to be able to make sure that they can monetize however they want, whether it be SVOD or AVOD or a mixed monetization or a hybrid monetization capability. It means that we need to be able to enable all of their data partnerships with companies like Wicket. It means that we need to be able to really offer them not just the expandability and the extensibility to flesh out all of the village it takes to run a service like this when it comes to technology providers, but also to do it in a way that doesn't require just reams and reams of redevelopment or custom bespoke work. Because ultimately our goal is to really ensure that we can get Pureflix's content out to customers very quickly, very easily. The longer that we are sort of building and rebuilding, the less time that Pureflix has in market, where they are going to be providing that solution that customers are really looking for, and also the ability to monetize their content efficiently and to secure their content in a way that protects their rights and protects their distribution capabilities. So when we think about all of these systems, we provide a lot of that ourselves, and we have to be able to do that no matter how many people show up. That is, as I mentioned, it's a bit of a unique challenge, because the more successful you are, obviously, in the OTT space, the harder it is to run. Every time you add one more user, it gets a little bit more complicated.
Right.
And if you add 1 million users, then it gets exponentially more complicated, because there's a lot that goes into every stream request has to be processed through about 7 or 8 different systems and, authentication capabilities and rights management. So it's important that we be able to do that no matter how big the audience, because it is our responsibility and our duty to ensure that Pureflix can be as successful as they are capable of being, and we do not cause any limitations in that fantastic video consumer experience that helps them maintain their audience.
So I wanted to follow up on something you just touched on very briefly there, and that was the monetization flexibility aspect. Now, of course, Pureflix is primarily focused on subscription, but there are other needs, of course. Advertising is one. Could you talk to us a little bit about advertising models? And Emma, if you could bring up slide 8 for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have come to kind of an inflection point in the OTT space where there's just an enormous amount of competition out there. And it's becoming increasingly important to both providers of content like Pureflix and also to customers to really have a great deal of flexibility in choice in how they pay for their content. SVOD is, you take a specific amount of money a month on a recurring basis. And the systems that go into that are complicated, but are some things that we can help enable very easily. And then you don't typically see a crossing of these models. You don't typically see, at least in the past, the crossing of an SVOD service with an AVOD service. However, we're really starting to see the desire to do that much more prevalent, because it does two things. One is that it enables you to lower your, if you can add AVOD to your SVOD mix, it allows you to lower your recurring costs in order to try and incentivize more customers to join the service and stay with the service, right? If you have less discrete money that is going out of your wallet on a monthly basis, then you are more likely to stay with the service. The caveat is that, of course, the company needs to make that up and they need to maintain their revenue levels. And so, we have to ensure that the systems are built and capable of intermingling those, so customers have the choice that they're looking for. They can opt into an AVOD model that has no or a lower subscription cost to it on a monthly basis, or they can upgrade to a pure subscription service and leave advertising behind for a higher price if that's something that is of value to them. And it's not up to us to decide what is valuable to Pureflix and to Pureflix's customers. It's up to us to ensure that those systems are capable, in place, and pre-wired to the complex ecosystems that both SVOD and AVOD require in order to make it all work. And, one of the things that we are seeing from a consumer perspective is that a lot of customers, a major OTT service in the United States offers a hybrid monetization model where their highest tier subscription service is about $12 a month, and their lowest tier is about $6 a month, and the lowest tier comes with advertising. But interestingly, they are seeing a higher average revenue per user number on the lowest subscription tier because they're making a great deal of money on the advertising, and they also have happier customers because those customers get to pick their experience.
Yep.
And Hulu gets to decide, Hulu or Pureflix or whoever gets to decide what that basic, what the lowest level that they are willing to operate at from a guaranteed revenue perspective is, and then layer in additional options for their customers so they can maintain their revenue streams, while also incentivizing customers to be happy and to that choice in how they want to pay, whether it's with their attention or whether it is with their wallet.
So, thank you very much. That was very informative. I want to move to Q&A. We've only got a couple of minutes left. So, Emma, if you can bring up slide 13. I've got several questions here that I'm not sure we'll get to both of them or all of them. And there are several questions here that are really good. If you'd like to ask a question, please do, and we will follow up with you afterwards if we don't get to your question. So the first question I think is probably Marty. When modeling lookalikes in Facebook, Google, what are the particular characteristics the platforms are looking at when modeling? Do you know the key signals of your happiest customers driving your acquisition success?
Yeah, so, we talked a little bit about how you can use machine learning to identify your happiest customers, but, As a substitute for that, what we've seen is that a combination of three pretty simple things to take a look at. One would be those customers that, based on total payments. So if you can aggregate, you can identify your most valuable customers. They're going to be a good signal in that direction. We then filter that down and look at, all right, well, how many of those are still active? It turns out that less than 50% of subscribers to these SVOD services are actually consuming video in the last 30 days. And so, identifying those that are actually consuming content is also another key indicator of a good, healthy relationship. And then the third might be, are they fans of a particular type of programs that as part of the then, you also have to balance that with the creative that you're putting in front of them. If you've got more content that's coming up of that genre or of that type, it's another drama or it's another great, family series or whatever to fold that data in, you create that cohort of, and then you can upload that data using a hashed email address is what Facebook and Google take. And then from that, they can then identify people that look just like those customers. And so that kind of equation about total payments, activity with the service, and then fans of particular content, you can bring that data together. And it's a pretty good substitute for not having to apply machine learning to it upfront.
Right. And I'm afraid with that, we're just about out of time. If you have any other questions, please send them in to us and we'll be happy to respond to them. This recording will be available to everybody. We'll make sure that you get a link to that. We'll also make sure you get a link to the presentation slides, the core presentation parts of this discussion. I want to thank our panelists, Evan, Marty and Martine, and I also want to thank Mark for spending time with us and telling us about challenges with Pureflix, and we will see you all again. Thank you.